function and through the Q&A function. And you will find those across the bottom panel of your screen, and you can type in them at any times, and we will get to them during the sessions when we have Q&A and an opportunity for people to respond. So with that, I believe now we can start the session. And I think there's a video to start off with, or is it that the video we already saw? Sorry for that, I didn't fully understand. Shall we go straight to the first speaker?
Pam, you may start now.
Okay, thank you. So before that, I'll just introduce myself. My name is Sue Vise, and I work with the UNESCO Regional Office in Bangkok. And together with a colleague, Estelle Bianabe, who is not with UNESCO, but she will introduce herself later, we will be moderating the session. And we have 3 kind of mini panels, and we will take those each one at a time with an opportunity for Q&A after each one. So in the first session, it's my pleasure to welcome 2 speakers to be followed by a discussant. Our speakers are Dr. Helmi from Indonesia, Dr. Koichi Ikegame from Japan, and our discussant will be Mr. Daniel Hayward. So I will start by introducing Professor Helmi. Professor Helmi I have known for some time, although it's been a long time since we've had an opportunity to see each other. Professor Helmi is a lecturer in agricultural development at Andalas University. He has a master's degree in social development studies, and his research area and teaching includes integrated natural resources management and governance, social entrepreneurship, and local economic development, agro-ecotourism, sustainable development and public policy, and innovation management and agricultural extension. So with that, over to you, Professor Helmi.
Thank you very much, Dr. Susan Vise, and very good morning to all of you. Let me do the share screen to start this presentation. Okay, this is the title of my presentation, which essentially there is a 2-point inside. Yeah, one is we have developed a framework to help local farmers and rural people before, which is drive by university. So university as the driver. Because of COVID, then we moved the driver to local champion. Yeah? And university, together with other stakeholders, provide support to this local champion to initiate and implement initiative at community level. And the second point is that the application of the principle of community entrepreneurship. What is it inside community entrepreneurship? One is solution for the farmers' problem and rural people problems. And second is creating financial value from the activities carried out at the community level. So this is the outline of presentation, the framework we use to adapt it, the approach, a summary of 5 local champion initiative and interaction with academia, some photos and social learning approach in adapting the framework. And the last one is lesson learned. And the first one is that family-based small-scale farming, as all we know, is dominant features of agriculture in Asia. And these farmers, small-scale farmers, facing problem and limitation, yeah, in different aspects of farming, from pre-production, production, post-harvest, marketing to earn income. So the challenge is how to support this family-based farming to address those challenges, yeah, and transforming agriculture system to build inclusive, safe, sustainable, and resilient society. So it is the need for bring down to the earth the agroecological framework. Yeah? The second is that sustainability and prosperity of family farming is really determined by solution to the problem they face and creating financial value out of farming activities. So here coming the concept of community entrepreneurship, give solution, creating financial value out of their farming activities. And the application of this entrepreneurial principle in the context of social responsibility and sustainability of rural livelihood. And we as university has tried to develop and adapted the framework. Initially, we did with UNESCO, and then as COVID-19 pandemic came, and we adapted the concept by including the concept of community entrepreneurship. So this is illustration. First, higher education or university is the main drivers of these activities to empower local farmers and rural people. But as pandemic came, we could not gather together in big number, and then we changed the approach by strengthening local champion to carry out the initiative at the field level. We also bring in the media. So whatever they do at the field level, it will be, fine in the media, whether it is social media and also the TV and newspaper, so other people can know, because the activities related to agri-tourism, eco-agro-tourism development. So we would like to let people know so that they come to visit the tourism, the agro-eco-tourism destination site, and it's create market for their product. So this is the 5 local champion. We try to work together with them. First one is coffee farming, which buy the red cherry fruit of coffee from the farmers, did the post-harvest processing, and also transform the coffee plantation site as ecotourism site. So now a lot of visitors coming in to enjoy the coffee plantation, to drink coffee and other activities at the rural environment. Second one, the local champion organize activities related to organic agriculture, provide healthy drink, herbal and vegetable fresh juice, and agri-eco-tourism as well. And the third one is we try to help them. They already starting agri-tourism destination site. We help them in training and promote the site so people can come. And together with that, we help them to process agriculture product as part of the tourism development. And local champion 4, we help them to create added value to local food product. And the 5th one is improving the product quality and try to help them to create demand to the product they produce. Just to give you idea, this is pictures from the local champion who we are working with. The first one is using coffee as social business. This is young entrepreneurs. We have trained them and also working with them in the field, try to establish the social business and ecotourism. So we try to promote the young entrepreneurs to work at the rural area. And the second one, we help the local champion to try to conserve the land and forest environment at the site and agriculture as well. and develop the site as ecotourism. Yeah? And the third one, it is creating added value to food product and supporting the village as tourism destination as well. And the first one, in that site, they produce a lot of pumpkin, but the price is very low. So we help them to process that pumpkin to be a processed food product and help them to enter the market as well. And this one, the fifth one, they have resources, salad, potato, yam, or taro, and we help them bringing innovation technology so that the product can enter the market and gain added value. In the process, we use social learning approach to adapt the framework. Frequently, we found that answer to the problem faced by farmers or rural community in some instance are not readily available. So we applied a social learning approach, which consists of learning to be effective. So one is gain know-how. Second is learning to be efficient. Based on the know-how we gain, how to do it with least cost. And the last one, learning to expand, how to expand the coverage of implementation of that initiative. So this is the social learning approach. So lessons we learn from these activities, one is that application of social community entrepreneurship principle provide basis for localizing agroecology. And consists of two things inside. One is innovative solution to the problem faced by farmers and help them creating financial value. And second one, the role of local champion in implementing the framework are important to foster application of innovative solution and creating value. The third one is the role of academia in collaboration with other key stakeholders to backstop local champion and community in improving their livelihood. And the last one is social learning approach has helped in creating innovative solution where answer to the problem faced by the community not readily available. So that's the summary of our initiative. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Dr. Helmi. It's really great to see local level, small scale farming communities working together in this way to promote and develop their local economy, their livelihoods, etc. So some really nice examples there from Indonesia. Our next speaker is Professor Koichi Ikegami, who is Emeritus Professor at Kindai University and President of the Asian Rural Sociology Association and the International Rural Sociology Association. Dr. Ikegami has a PhD from Kyoto University in Agricultural Sciences, and his major interest is the North-South problem and its mitigation from global and local perspectives. In particular, integration and representation, food sovereignty and agroecology. His current research focuses on South Africa, Tanzania, Mozambique, Laos, and Japan. And he's also continuing to research on the revitalization of activities in depopulated areas in Japan. So he's going to speak to us today a little bit about the Association of Western Japan Agroecology, which is one of the areas that he's been working to support over the last years. So over to you, Professor Ikegami.
Well, thank you very much for Sue. Today, I'd like to talk about the establishment of the Association of Western Japan as Agroecology, and based on reflection of the history of the KK. The KK means a direct partnership between producers and consumers in Japan. So today I have two topics. First one is a mission and action plan of the Association of Western Japan Agroecology, it's called AUJA. And this is a forward movement. I just established the AUJA in this year. So today I'd like to talk about the mission and the tentative action plan. The second one is a historical consideration. I think it is very useful to look back the history of Japanese organic agriculture and to examine what we can learn from the experience of Teikei. So the agroecology has now widely spread around the world and is expected to be a solution, not only the food problem, but also the climate crisis and biodiversity loss. However, in Japan, agroecology is a relatively new idea. Few scientists and practitioners acknowledge its importance and significance. There was no policy based on the concept of agroecology. Recently, Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry and Fishery in Japan introduced the Midori strategy. Midori means the green. The green means green strategy for sustainable food system. And it aims at 25% of farmland would be practiced by organic agriculture by 2050. Yet, even this policy does not refer agroecology anywhere. And so, in this year, I founded the AUJA with my colleagues to promote agroecology as the first active group of agroecology. Although agroecology is new in Japan, but Japan has a long experience of Teikei initiatives and cross contact between organic farmers and consumers for almost half a century. Teikei has been regarded as an origin of CSA, community-supported agriculture. Unfortunately, Teikei is losing the influence power gradually. Thus, it is worthy of analyzing why this decline occurred and to apply such reflection to agroecology. So accordingly, the first purpose of this presentation is to summarize history of Teikei to know the lessons from the experience, and also to clarify what are crucial reasons for decline in dynamism of organic agriculture. Is also the first purpose. And second is to consider if agroecology can realize the philosophy of Teikei initiative. And third one is to announce the founding of the AUJA for networking with the organization, with other organizations, especially in Asia. And so the necessity of transforming industrial agri-food system is widely realized because of climate crisis, biodiversity loss, and socio-cultural diversity loss, as well as COVID-19 pandemic. And so the AUJA thinking thinks agroecology can be a powerful solution for such challenges. On the other hand, organic agriculture is limited very much. As is shown in this figure, organic farmland in Japan, the percentage of organic farmland is less than 0.3%. So it is very now stagnant in Japan. So I think the agroecology can break through such difficulty. So, as many presenters mentioned yesterday, agroecology is a framework, integrated framework, especially that integrates the agricultural practice, the science and social movement. I think the goal is to release food sovereignty and right to food from the yoke of industrial agri-food systems and to realize a society cherished life. As for practice, the ARJA is trying to shift from industrial agriculture to intrinsic one. Intrinsic one means the agricultural way to follow the ecosystem. And as for social movement, ARJA is engaged in transforming agri-food systems at the grassroots level, local innovation, seeking for social justice and sustainability. The origin, as for the technological aspect of agroecology, it is essential to draw out the power of creatures in the interdependent relationships between plants and animals based on the principles of ecosystem in terms of complexity. We will collect actual practices, local and traditional knowledge in the local context. So now we will collect actual practices, local and traditional knowledge in the local context. The origin of the ARJA can go back to 1974, which was just 3 years later of founding of the Japan Organic Agricultural Association. One organic farmers group and one consumer group began KK initiative. However, in 2014, the organic farmers group divided to two groups, of research-oriented one and certificated body, because of opinion differences about the Japan Agriculture Standards organic certification system. And 2020, the consumer group decided to dissolve because of decrease of members and aging. Instead, the ARJA restarted as a combination body of farmers, consumers, cooperative consumers, logistic providers, and food processors, and researchers. So the major tentative actions is written as follows. First, to summarize KK to apply the lessons of agroecology. The second one is to analyze the current agri-food systems by SAFA, Sustainability Assessment of Food and Agriculture System by FAO. And third one is to collect and list knowledge and skills related to agroecology and to use them, a database of our inventory. And so this means to combine individual knowledge and technologies to create a framework for Japanese-style agroecology. And lastly, to create and support local agri-food system. And so now I go to the next topics. And And the organic agriculture in Japan started by founding of the Japan Organic Agriculture Association in 1971. At that time, this JOAA consists of farmers, consumers, and it's very important to include the synergists, doctors, and researchers. And basic philosophy of JOAA was to switch modernized agriculture into an intrinsic one. That means to return and search for ideal farming method, but radically reflecting on conventional farming method. And that I think it is very important, their philosophy based on the belief of depending on nature force, that the combination of nature and human. And 10 years later, about 10 years later, JOAA created 10 principles of take care. This is a very important feature of take care principle. The number 3, accepting all the produce which farmers produced. 4th, mutual concession in the price decision. And 6th, the self-distribution. And 9th, maintaining the appropriate group scale. And 3rd, in the 1980s, the organic markets grown very steadily. And however, it includes the whole organic produce. And so the Japanese Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry and Fishery, MAF, introduced the voluntary guideline of certification labeling in 1992. And 2000, also MAF adopted Japan Agriculture Standard for Organic Products, the so-called Organic JAS. And in 2006, as a result of Organic Agriculture movement, the Organic Agriculture Promotion Act was resolved. And in this process, the marketing circuits are diversified very much. And so at the initial stage, we have just a take care route, but after that, the special logistic providers started to their business, and natural food shops and department stores are dealing with organic produce. And also, after that, currently, there are more variable routes for selling the organic produce. And in this process, I think the food will change to commodities with high value added, so they can consumers can buy the organic produce anywhere and anytime if they want to. So this chart illustrates the process of organic movement in Japan according to a driving force of organic agriculture. At the initial stage, as I mentioned already, there are various driving forces, which include not only consumer movement, demanding for food safety, but also farmers' movement transforming conventional farming method, and rural medicine movement for improving the health of farmers. And it's worthy of noting that organic agriculture movement was organized by cooperation of wide stakeholders, consumers, and rural medicine doctors, and farmers themselves. Currently, the driving force of modern organic agriculture has converged to the high added value commodity or to the produce of with low environmental loss. Briefly, the momentum of organic agriculture in the early days could be seen as a joint force of 3 aspects of consumers' movement, farmers' will to change the farming method, and the rural medicine movement. But afterwards, it has been simplified to either economy or environment. That means that organic agriculture lost the aspect of social movement and its intrinsic purpose. So this is I mentioned already. So I think I like to putting on the I like to stress the highlighted place, the simplification of viewpoints to either economy or environment. This is a very weak point of current organic agriculture in Japan. So that means the loss of social movement and intrinsic purpose. So in this process, TK lost its influence power. Peak of TK was in the 1990s. In the 21st century, TK lost. TK were stagnant and fell down to a slump. So that's why we can identify the many reasons, but I think they can be divided into two factors: internal factors and external factors. And internal factors, the first one is aging of both organic farmers and consumers without entries of new members. And second one is the gaps between 10 principles and actual situation, especially the TK is based on housewife models. TK has assumption that housewife stays at home daytime to care house matters. The farmer delivers their produce directly to small groups of consumers, and mainly housewives, daytime, one after another. But the housewives started to work outside of the home. There were another gaps, but I've skipped them today. Another external factor is establishment of variety of organic markets, by which willing to buy consumers can buy any organic foods, including imported organic produce. And also, this most important factor is a superficial understanding about organic agriculture. So I will conclude. The one question is a meaning of institutionalization. Of course, in 2006, the Organic Agriculture Promotion Act was a result of organic agriculture movement. Yet, that the institutionalization has contradictory aspects. I wonder this institutionalization accelerate for simple understanding about organic agriculture, justifying methods that does not use pesticide or chemical fertilizer. And so, accordingly, significance of intrinsic organic agriculture has been lost. And so they are lost, such organic farmers are less concerned for the functioning of ecosystems and the conservation of biodiversity. So currently, we can see the polarization of organic farmers. First one is the business-oriented organic farmers. They adopted monoculture organic farming, depending on external inputs. And they plant only crops and to sell at a mass level. The second one is intrinsic organic family farmers with small and medium size. They plant a variety of plants and keep livestock. And so now we are facing the very severe question: what are the meaning of organic agriculture? And so second point is of my conclusion is how to revitalize TK and further promotion of intrinsic organic agriculture. For this purpose, the environment of the younger generation is essential. So in the process of organic agriculture movement, young people decreased because the social aspects of organic agriculture movement become smaller. But however, currently the younger generation is more interested in environmental issues such as climate crisis, biodiversity loss, and social issues such as inequality and human rights. As agroecology encompasses such issues, the AUJA will approach from this perspective. Thank you for kind attention. And this photo is a typical scenery of maybe agroecological or organic farming. Thank you for kind attention.
Thank you so much, Professor Ikegami. And that was a lovely picture to finish on, showing, I guess, a really ideal situation that we were looking for. I think it's quite interesting that both of our presenters have really given a lot of examples about the value of working together and the role that community really needs to play in sustainable agriculture and agroecology. But to move on, next we're going to have a discussant who's going to make some remarks and reflections on the presentations. Our discussant is Daniel Hayward, and Daniel is the project coordinator for the Mekong Land Research Forum at Chiang Mai University in Thailand. So over to you, Daniel.
Thank you so much, Sue, and thank you also to the two presenters. It's been a very interesting session to hear from the two of you. So as Sue mentioned, I'm the project coordinator of the Mekong Land Research Forum. This is just one job amongst others, including work for Land Portal and also work under various topics as an independent development consultant. So as a context for my comments, my own work and research, amongst other things, looks into responsible agricultural investment, land relations and agricultural value chains, particularly for maize and banana in the Mekong region. In this sense, I don't see myself as an expert on agroecology. So in that way, I wish to thank the speakers once more for really adding to my knowledge on this topic. What we have here are two presentations looking at local movements in Indonesia and Japan that incorporate aspects of agroecology. So first, in the talk by Professor Haumi, we heard about how agroecology can support farmers through multi-stakeholder community learning and action center. An emphasis is placed on the relationship of academics to community producers, although it is interesting to hear how local champions have gained a more prominent role due to the limited mobility of stakeholders during the COVID-19 pandemic. Then in the second presentation, we heard from Emeritus Professor Koichi Ikegami about the setting up of the Association of Western Japan Agroecology in 2021. And as an aside, it's quite surprising to me that the rise of interest in agroecology is really quite recent. Also surprising to see the amount of land that is classed as organic farmland in Japan too. In his presentation, Professor Koichi discussed the wider notion of how agroecology can contribute to a reimagining of an organic movement. This movement is seen to have stagnated and become focused on the use of inputs that are safe for farmers and the environment, rather than carrying a broader concern for the relationship between agriculture, ecosystems, and biodiversity. My responses fall into three main points that I would like to make now. So point number one, the notion of agroecology being a multi-stakeholder endeavor, and as Dr. Su mentioned, a sort of a strong need for community action, and what this means. So firstly, following the presentation from Professor Helmy, it's great to see how academics are using their position to work with multilateral institutions such as UNESCO in order to promote awareness and understanding of agroecology with farmers. This kind of work is familiar to me at the Faculty of Social Sciences in Chiang Mai University, where whether this means advocating for ethnic minority rights in northern Thailand or working together on community livelihood projects. It's also good to see a clear stating of simple lessons through the social learning approach to help communities work with other actors to improve their produce and hopefully gain a better return. For the study from Japan, it's then interesting that both consumer and farmer were key figures in the call for organic principles in farming. The question I have is how to maintain longevity to these endeavors. The Japan case shows that organic farming has struggled to follow its initial intentions due to the aging of the original motivating actors. In Indonesia, it is great to see the emergence of local champions as instigators of agroecology. But how can the resulting practices become institutionalized, so to speak, at the community level and outlast the energy of individual actors to keep them going? One thing that is perhaps not so clear to me here is who or what is the private sector in these multi-stakeholder platforms. In these cases, it seems that we are looking at agricultural models where farmers maintain control of their land and crop choices. And the private sector is perhaps the wider market chain, linking farmers to consumers in the hope of a high value added return. Or is the aim to link farmers directly to consumers and cut out the corporate middleman altogether? This leads me to my second point of response. How does agroecology engage with commercialized agriculture? And to start with, I reflect a little bit on some of the work I do. So at present, in the Mekong region, there is a top-down, donor-led movement for responsible agricultural investment. Amongst other aspects, there is a call to make investments inclusive and equitable for smallholders in direct engagement with commercial agribusiness companies. And there are different types of investment models to engage with farmers and their land. The problem I find here is that the aim for environmental sustainability in RAI, responsible agricultural investment, frequently becomes left out in discussions. And for me, this is a big advantage with agroecology, which places the soil and surrounding biodiversity center stage. It is a bottom-up movement. The examples from the Indonesia presentation are good in how they demonstrate practices of agroecology that have high added value potential for smallholder producers. Again, for me, this chimes with similar social entrepreneurship projects in northern Thailand, feeding a consumer interest in quality, locally sourced coffee, ethical tourism, and organic produce. Such products lend themselves well to local markets. The question for me is, what happens when we start looking at the mass-produced industrial boom crops, such as maize, rubber, oil palm, cassava, sugarcane? How do we retain the local when the focus is so multinational? So I do wonder where agroecology places itself next to large commercial value chains that dominate the trade of agricultural commodities. Is the aim to transform it, or to cancel it, or to minimize it? In this sense, is agroecology to act as a form of activism or advocacy? There is such a strong contrast between agroecology and big food. Where are the entry points to engage with industrialized farming actors? Or is it about working wholly apart within localized systems of production and consumption? This certainly reflects back to the notion of tekei as personal forms of exchange in Japan. And this leads me to my third and final point in my response. Agroecology is looking both backwards and forwards. In relating it to tekei, Professor Ikegami places agroecology with a form of organic farming that is losing its appeal. As he rightly states, understanding this diminished interest will be vital to make sure that agroecology gains popularity in Japan. Yet it remains important to highlight that agroecology places importance on the social relations in local agricultural communities and how they connect to their local ecosystems. Understanding these relationships is one key to the success of working with principles of agroecology. And I do wonder whether there will be some sort of a context for some aspects of tekei to re-emerge as an important frame for sustainable agriculture. At the same time, agroecology is a progressive approach in its desire to address the current climate crisis and concerns over big food and farming. It is clear that a younger generation is motivated by these issues and are taking a critical and active stance against environmental injustices in the world. In this sense, agroecology has potential to connect time, that being past and future, space, that is biodiversity and sort of the human worked landscape, and people, be they producers or consumers. So these are just a few thoughts in response to these two excellent presentations. And I do say once again, thank you so much to both presenters for really giving me a very clear snapshot into some of the work going on in Indonesia and Japan. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Daniel. And you made my job very easy. I have nothing left to sum up because you've done it so well. But yes, I think you raise a lot of very interesting points in terms of moving forward. How do you create the policy landscape and the strategies needed to address some of those big questions? For example, you know, the relationship between agroecology and industrial agriculture, and, you know, this revitalization of communities, etc. So given that our session is relating to policies and strategies, I think that's something to keep in mind. I just wonder if we do have one question. So before we move to the next session, I'm just going to put this to the three of you, and please jump in if any of you feel that you have some points to make. And the question actually relates to whether or not organic farming can actually have adverse effects on the environment, and if so, what could some of those be? So if any of you have any examples, we could take that question and then we'll move on to the next session.
And Susan, please, Dr. Helmi and Dr. Koichi, feel free to react to what Daniel, to the very rich comment of Daniel, which I think creates important ground for the discussion.
Yeah, I would like to comment on Daniel. Yeah, it is very important point. How to institutionalize this kind of initiative to the future. Yeah. I'd like to give you example. The local champion one about coffee. The young entrepreneurs set cooperative. Yeah, with the cooperative, they are working with the villager, with the farmers, and in 4 years' time, this cooperative has able to export the coffee bean to Australia. Yeah, so they work with coffee businesses. And right now, they get support also from Rabobank, yeah, from Netherlands, to improve their business, the business model, the business process, and also to expand the farmers' coffee plantation under the cooperative. And also, this local champion one they has the grant from the state, to manage the forest, the state forests for social forestry. So they can slowly expand the coffee plantation, increasing the capacity to produce and also to supply the Indonesian market as well as to export to the international market. So the business sector now is putting attention on this local initiative organized under cooperative, and the second local champion, they set up a kind of self-managed agriculture training and rural training center, something like that, which is formalized under the Ministry of Agriculture. So it is not individual initiative, they have the group, and they got, we have in West Sumatra province where this located, we have a salmon factory. So they have a CSR, corporate social responsibility. So we try to connect this local institution with this private sector, so they get support in terms of, get equipment, whatever it is, not big money, but it's sufficient for them to move forward, this kind of things. And the third one is get support from the national oil company, because the government of Indonesia is really serious about tourism development. And the third village, the third local champion, deal with development of a rural tourism site. So the national oil company helps them to build supporting facilities so that the local creative can do the activities, produce the product. And we're still working on linking the local champion 4 and 5 to other private sector. So this is the way we see that, because the prime mover now is the local champion, not the university anymore. So when they see there is a financial value creating from the activities, their spirit is improved, and then they seriously try to move forward. So this is the kind of things. So we, as university, as academia, we step a little bit back. We let the local champion to be in front, and we backstop the local champion so that the initiative can move forward. Thank you very much.
Okay, so thank you for a very nice and interesting question and comment for Daniel. I think the first, the Japanese community, Mura, and also the Japanese university, very conservative, very conservative. So even in about organic farming, we don't, our university doesn't have any course for training and teaching. And so 5 years ago, just one university introduced the one lab for organic farming. So many researchers, including both natural sciences and social sciences, facing the competition between the how to they promote. So they have to write many articles. So in this the cooperation between the communities and academia is very less and very difficult in Japan. That is a general situation. So I think it is very important to introduce the local community-based institute in the local field. And so now the AUJA intended to set the model farms of agroecology for demonstrate how to farmers can how can deal the pest or weed control. So this the object can contribute to set up the close relations between academia and communities. And so, the second one. And also the farmers involved in agroecology has to sell their produce, of course, because of improving their livelihood. So in this sense, the agroecology is all should be commercialized, but the level of commercialization or environment of market should be reconsidered. I think the agroecological produce should be sold at the local market level, including at the prefecture. In Japan, the national, prefecture, and the municipalities are three levels of administration system. So at the national level, it's very difficult for agroecological produce because the ecosystem is very different from in the so I think and so we think I think it is necessary to consider categorize how to be involved in market, how to integrate the market, so local market or national market or international global market. So Daniel mentioned the business sector, what is the interest of business sector. Of course, the business sector, the local level, especially the food processing at the local level, has a strong interest in for local product. But the national level, especially retailers and supermarket, goes to the same standards of organic farms, organic produce, and the stable quantity. So it's I think it's very difficult to at the grassroots level. So the agroecological produce should go to the local market. Thank you for. I think that is enough. I can memo. Enough.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think we could have quite a long discussion on many of these points, but Daniel, perhaps any final words from you before we move on to the next component of the session?
Certainly, maybe thank you for those two comments. Maybe I'll give a quick reflection on very quick reflection on the question that was posted and leave it at that. Can organic farming affect the environment in a bad way, and how? The how I won't address specifically, but I think let's have a reminder that there are many different motivations behind organic farming, which could, on the one hand, be farming taking place with a genuine, a kind of a genuine concern about how your working the landscape interacts with the wider biosphere, compared to whether organic farming is more a case of box ticking in order to achieve a labeling and receive kind of get your high value added product. And within that, so there's different forms of organic farming which could affect the environment in different ways. And I think Professor Ikagawa kind of refers to this in his presentation very much. So that's, I know you have to move on, so that's my only comment.
Thank you very much. So I'd like to answer that very briefly. If the farmers inputs use a lot too much nutrition, nitrogen fertilizer, not from artificial, but the organized from manure. Too many inputs of nitrogen can cause a very severe pollution, especially into the underground water. And also the monoculture organic farming has impact to the ecosystem, because ecosystem has a very diversity and complexity. So the monoculture organic farming has a very simplification. So simplified method should cause a lot of impacts on ecosystem. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you so much to Professors Helmi and Ikegami for your presentations, and to Daniel for the very interesting and thought-provoking comments. If you have further questions, you can, of course, put them in the Q&A and they can be answered later or via typing. But we will move now on to the next session. So in this component, we have one speaker followed by a discussant. Our speaker is Dr. Hui Tran, and our discussant is Huan, who will follow her with some remarks. So Dr. Hui Tran is working for In Veritas, and you will find out more about that in her presentation. And she is part of a project based out of Vietnam. She's an Asia regional expert and Vietnam country representative. In her role, she focuses on sustainability assessment in Vietnam coffee production. She's also responsible for sharing insights and recommendations for making improvements in this field and helping other coffee producing countries in Asia in topics related to agronomy and sustainability. Hui has been working as a coffee researcher in the Western Highlands Agriculture and Forestry Science Institute for almost 20 years, and her major area of expertise is plant breeding, genetics, and genomics. She completed her master's in science at Southern Cross University in Australia and a PhD in biotechnology applied in agriculture from University of Queensland, also in Australia. So please, Hui, over to you for your presentation.
Thank you, Sue. Shall I share my screen now? Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. Good
you
morning.
May want to put it in full screen mode if you can, because we can see it.
Sure. Yeah. I will unplug my
Thanks.
The other screen. Give me 1 second.
That's it.
Okay.
Perfect now.
Thank you. Good. Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I hope all stay safe in the pandemics. First of all, I could like to say thanks to FAO, UNESCO, CWEB, and other organizers for giving us a chance to present our work at this event. On behalf of the research team, I would like to present our work And here's the title. Okay. So in my talk, I will first cover the background and then the research and methodology, and then the overview of coffee farms in Vietnam. What are our findings? What's challenging, and the suggestions for initiatives. Our study is the outcomes of the partnership of the three institutions, Veritas, Caras, and Jalat University. Veritas is an NGO based in the US and very new, founded in 2016. We are currently operating in more than 20 countries. In the last 3 years, we partnered with Caras and Jalat University to perform large-scale and real-time surveys in Central Highlands of Vietnam. And within 3 years, we cover more than 15,000 farmers across Central Highlands of Vietnam. Okay, so coffee is an important commodity and play a very important role to Vietnam economy with annual return of more than 3 billion US dollar. And this tree originally grown under shade. However, due to the fluctuation of the coffee price and other crop prices, so farmers changed their farming practices. So they cut down the shade tree to maximize the yield due to the demand, high demand of coffee or the high prices of coffee. And recently, they intercropping more in the coffee farm due to the low price of coffee. And then in the recent 2 years, when the coffee slightly increased, their signal of farmer cutting down the fruit trees again. So the challenging here is the farming practices mainly market driven. So making the integrated coffee system uncertain in the future if there are no adequate initiatives undertaken. In our study, we looked into 2 farmer groups, monocropping and intercropping, to confirm the advantages of integrated coffee system, which is a very significant for the farmers in the pandemics, market risks, and climate change. And Veritas used the artificial intelligence algorithm to identify the coffee farm using satellite imagery and the GPS coordinates. We then collect the data from GPS point and using the app-based to do the real-time survey. So you can see from the slide that our enumerators travel and reach the most challenging locations in Central Highlands of Vietnam. So the pins are completely randomized, and with the statistically robust, the surveys are conducted in the harvest farm. So we can observe the farming practices, harvesting activities, and labor. We apply back check for 5 to 10% to make sure the rigorous quality. And we then got the big data with multi-layer Q&A check. So in the last 3 years, we collected 15,000 farmers. Yeah, we collected data from more than 15,000 farmers. And in this project, we use the data from the most 2 recent year, which covers 7,300 farmers. Okay, so here's the overview of intercropping in the coffee farms in Central Highlands of Vietnam. So you can see from the chart that is a very common especially for Jack and Jackmo. About 90% of farmers we surveyed intercrop coffee with at least one type of crop, and mainly fruit trees like a durian, avocado, jackfruits. We also looked at the shade levels, different shade levels in the coffee farms, and we found one province, Lam Trong, has a very high percentage of the farm with no or light shade levels. So this should be the target region for the initiatives of integrated coffee system. For the purpose of this study, we defined two groups of farmers, monocropping and intercropping. So between the two groups, the years of farming experience and yield a significant difference between the two groups. The other, like a farmer age, farm size, or education level, is not significant between the two. Yeah. Okay. So this is a clear pattern that the farmer in the intercropping groups have in the intercropping group, there have less farmer live in the poverty, and it's not surprising that the intercropping group has a less farmers consider coffee as the main income. So in terms of farming practices, intercropping farmers use less inorganic fertilizer, and more percentage of farmers using organic fertilizer. They also report that having less issue with pest and disease. And other farming practices is quite comparable between the two groups. It's very common that shade has a negative correlation with yield. And here we can see very clearly for the non-category, the yield is always higher than any other levels of shading. Similarly, for fertilizer, we can see that at a higher level of fertilizer application, the yield is also higher. However, when we look into more in-depth analysis with the ROI analysis, we found that at some level of fertilizer application, the positive relation of yield and fertilizer changing, and too high fertilizer will diminish the return of the farmer. Okay, so right down to the single variable by the two farmer archetype, we found the intercrop farmers achieve lower yield, so they have a lower income from coffee. But at the same time, they also apply less fertilizer, and total household income is higher compared to the mono one. Yeah, so there's just a few examples of analysis based on the real data that add to a rich literature on the advantages of intercropping over monocropping. So the study, one more time, confirming the benefits of intercropping. However, because of the intercropping practicing is mainly market driven, so there are issues with uncertainty. Yeah, so in the next slide, we will mention about the, okay, we mentioned about the challenging in maintaining the intercrop system and our suggestion for initiatives. Yeah, so for the first and second points, I'm just giving an example. For instance, in the periods of 2010 to 2019, for entire Vietnam, area for food crops increased by almost 30%, because fruit trees considered as a good cash return crop, while other annual crops such as maize, soybean, peanut drop, making animal sectors largely dependent in the imported feeds. And this negative influence the economy and causing uncertainty for the long-term sustainability. So when the farming system is mainly market-driven, farmers start cutting down trees with low price, while it takes so long for these trees to get being mature. And the multiple roles of ecosystem service on the farming efficiency, sustaining the economic benefits, and farmers' resilience are not fully aware. So the farming practices in the future is uncertain. Okay, so the issue will not solely result by one or two stakeholders in the supply chain. It requires the participation of all actors in the coffee supply chain. So from the government to research institution, university, NGO, I will mention more detail for this box, supplier and roaster. And finally, but the most important is farmers. So in the matter of the time constraint, I'm not going to go into each box, but it's already listed the initiatives here for each actors with the highlighted in the box. Okay, so the last slide is a more specific for ARI's initiatives. So first, we can adopt data-driven approach and agroecological transition monitoring. So as we can see that farming practices will be further driven by markets, climate change, and pandemics. So the issue with so if we would like to promote it, we need to have a method or a tool to promote and also assess the agroecological measurement. And at the same time, we need to design the integrated system suitable for each location. And finally, we should educating or disseminating the ecological knowledge or ecosystem role through different channels like ARIS or mass media or policy dialogue. So this is my last slide. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks so much, Dr. Hui. We'll just move on to the discussion, but look out for any questions in the chat and we'll come back to them after our discussant. So yes, very interesting. And I particularly take your points about the external impacts and how they can really affect what people are doing with their sustainable agriculture, which I have always tended to think about as more like locally driven and locally based, but quite interesting how those things can change it. So our discussant for this particular session is Mr. Do Trong Hoan, and he is a research officer at ICRAF, the World Agroforestry Center, and he is also based in Vietnam. So Hoan, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Su Vice, and good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Do Trong Hoan, a researcher at the World Agroforestry, and it is such a great pleasure to be a discussion in this session, especially that I have only one presentation to discuss. Daniel had two, so he was more busy. So I got a master's degree on environmental science and technologies from Pohang University in South Korea, and currently I'm engaging in a PhD at the Wageningen University in research in the Netherlands. So I've been working at eCraft for around 10 years, research interests around the land use change, landscape governance, climate change policies, and especially the ecosystem services, with focus on the forest margins, which is the interface between the forest and agriculture. Although I'm not a coffee expert per se, but I find the topic today very relevant and also very interesting. Back to the enlightening presentation from Dr. Hui and Dr. Hoi, I must say I agree with most of the points, especially that both farmers and policymakers are now running after the market change, and there is very little awareness on the role of ecosystem services to coffee plantation and how the good practices of the farmers can help them to deliver ecosystem services on the land plots. I think the study is one of the very few studies in Vietnam that provide concrete evidence on productivities and farmer adoption in the integrated coffee plantation in the country. So we do expect more study of this kind to consolidate the role of agroforestry and agroecological farming practices to support such a policy in the future. Having said that, we find that the results are not surprising if we look back to the development of the coffee sector in Vietnam in the last 30 years. I find that the intensive efforts have been spent to the coffee sector, mostly the smallholders monoculture of coffee Robusta in the Central Highlands, which now account for roughly about 93% of total country production. So as a result of the policy, we have about 500,000 farmers working on around 500,000 hectares of coffee Robusta to make the country the second largest coffee exporters in the world. And the huge amount of subsidies and preferential credits will provide to farmers to buy coffee seedlings, often they are the improved varieties, to buy fertilizers and other agrochemicals inputs to achieve the only one goal, the constant high yield. So you know that in Vietnam, we have the average yield is 2.4 to 2.8 tons per hectare per year. Almost double of that, the runner-up, which is the Brazil, 1.4 ton per hectare per year. And compared to most of the other countries in Asia, they have less than 1 ton per hectare per year, like 0.8 tons in Thailand, for example. So it seems like the only limiting factors of productions to be water. I see in Lâm Dong province, for example, we have very low adoption of intercropping because their farmers have enough water and they have favorable climate conditions. So the strategy to achieve the goal, the high yield, I will say, is to employ a very segregated and sparing land use strategy that allows farmers to focus on productivity on their farming plots, while all of the concern on forest and ecosystem services like water, like soil, like biodiversity are left out. And the policy that support coffee sector in the same time conflicting with other sectors. I work a lot with the forestry people, and frankly speaking, many of them see coffee sectors as evil, I would say, quote unquote, to the forest. You see, most of the coffee farms in Vietnam are from the forest, and still today, more than 100,000 hectares are still illegal inside the forest boundary. So on one hand, the government pay for the forest rangers to go around protecting the forest. And on the other hand, the coffee farmers are subsidized by many other government policy and that keep going into the forest. On one hand, the government said that they want to promote intercropping with various fruit trees and timber. But on the other hand, they did not invest much in producing high quality seedling for the fruit trees. And if they can do, they sell it at a very high price. While for the coffee varieties, superior coffee varieties in terms of production, often they get subsidized. And the market, the efforts to enlarge the market for fruit trees is much less compared to the lucrative markets for coffee. And on one hand, the government said that water is very important but on the other hand, the farmers are free access to raw water. They can use as much as they can. They don't have to pay any fee for irrigation and do not require to plant shade tree. So on one hand, the government said a lot of climate change concern, and they commit a lot in the conferences and very ambitious climate change mitigation agenda in the NDC. But on the other hand, they subsidize lots of fertilizers to farmers, which eventually cause emission. So if that's a background for the presentation, I think it's a bit more information for you. And now if you want to move forward to a more integrated coffee plantation, more climate-friendly future. On the policy side, I think we really need a more coordinated and sharing policy strategies that achieve multifunctionality of the coffee farms, which is not only yields, we also need to achieve the goals of conserving water, soil, and biodiversity, and less and less carbon emission, and even carbon sequestration from the tree that is integrated in the farm. So I think the policy should focus on more, not just coffee, but also other crops and the forests and the trees. Must ensure the connectivities and flows of the ecosystem services. Also allow people to sharing risks and opportunities, sharing the cost of production and the environmental responsibilities. And we need a more coordinated action for the policy of the agriculture with and other forest protection, business development, and environmental and climate change. Now, however, I'm not quite sure that in the near future we would have such an integrated or well-coordinated policy landscape as we wish for. So I think we need to first start finding solutions from the existing policy and measures. That's why I like to raise some open question, not just to the presenters, but to all of us at the Food for Thoughts for today and maybe the days after. So please do allow me to share my screen, prepare some question here. All right, so as you can see in the screen, I propose some kind of open question also as an entry point for the agroecological coffee development in the future. So we have to think of many things on the forest and ecosystem services. The Vietnam already have a strategy for forest protection and payment for forest ecosystem services. So what would be the implication to the coffee sectors? In terms of water, Vietnam also have a very ambitious plan. What would be the implication to coffee sectors? In terms of climate change, are the same. We have NDC, we have green growth strategy. What would it be for coffee? At the same time, we have sustainable landscape governance initiatives, some like the PPI of the IDAs, some of the RED+, and what else? How do we scale up such a small initiative? We also need to care about the things of and consolidation because of the smallholder practicing at the moment. We want to improve. We also care about the planting of other trees and crops, and we try to find synergies and trade-offs between that and the coffee. We also have concern about the poverty alleviation and the labor markets relating to the coffee sectors. And hopefully we will have some kind of policy or some kind of framework to capture all of the above. But how, I don't know. So this is just a kind of question to all of you. So, well, that's my point. I hope it's helpful somehow. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Owen. You're actually giving us much more to think about. There's, of course, a lot of, I really like the way you pointed out some of those inconsistencies. And that seems to me, yesterday we had some comments about sometimes it can be very confusing for farmers when they're getting these kind of mixed messages and things like that. And, you know, to me, if we really want to make progress on the policy front, perhaps we need to look at how do we address some of those inconsistencies. So I think you pointed them out really nicely. We do have one question in the Q&A. The question is to Dr. Hui. You present the impact of shade on coffee yield. Did you try to assess coffee production stability? Very coffee-oriented question as well. But quickly, Hui, do you have a response on this one?
Okay, interesting. Thank you, Pascal. In our, because we are doing the verification against the sustainability standard, Enveritas sustainability standard during the past 3 years. So actually, we didn't set up any experiment to assess the coffee production stability. Yeah, but our data show that like a wood and also literature. Yeah, our data is just purely asking the farmer on the yield during the past 3 years, and we can see that like with the shade system, the yield stability is improving, like a much better, more stable compared to the mono one. Yeah, as we know that the benefit of the shading. For the question, thanks, Pascal, and for the question from Juan, thank you very much, Juan. I'm just giving a tiny a part of our data set, and you gave us a much overview, a broader overview on the intercropping or agroecological system for coffee. So I may, do we have a time for like addressing those questions from Juan now? Or should we go to the next?
Please go ahead. Please go
ahead. Okay, for sure. Okay. So for the let me go through every single one. The first one is about forest and ecosystem services, the implication for the coffee sector. So according to the World Coffee Research, the land suitability for coffee in the coffee origins will reduce significantly with the current speed of climate change. So Vietnam may lose up to 30% of land suitability for coffee by 2050. So we know that there are no more land expansion for coffee farming. So I think for this, we only one approach is by land sharing. So with the land sharing is very important, and it's also bring the benefit sharing. And I think with the agroforestry system approaching, it will be in line with this strategy. My experience with certification in coffee sector. Currently, the percentage of certification in coffee sector is about 30%. And in this certification program, they also encourage the farmer applying the good agricultural practices. So in which is also promoting the more diversified on the coffee farm. So that's also kind of like a win-win practice. So for pay for ecosystem services, I think that's a new terms for coffee. But I'm aware that in Nicaragua, they have a project that's supporting the small farmers to implement climate smart agricultural practices, so that they can, in the form of like a certified carbon offset, as a form of payments for ecosystem services. Yeah, but I think for Vietnam coffee sector, in the other form of PEST, which is promoting a low or zero carbon coffee production or carbon credit, yeah, with the price mechanism. So that's just still the target. Yeah, and to do this one is require strong commitment of different stakeholders, and more specific is a roaster. Is a very important, and also client that they commit to buy low carbon, so that it can favor the agroforestry system and more diversity on the farm. You also mentioned about the coffee system in the forest lands. I know that ICRAT have a very strong research on this area, and we just mentioned about London and also like a Techno, the area of coffee plantation in the forest lands or near the forest land is a very high. Say, for example, Techno is accounting for 48%. And you also mentioned about like the policy is kind of somehow inconsistent. So yeah, we can see like in some province like a Đắk Nông, the farmers expand the coffee plantation, coffee farms, and they grow coffee in the forest land. And in general, the authorities still allow, especially for the local people, the ethnic minorities, because that's their like a source of living. Yeah, but the authorities also recommend the farmer to integrate the indigenous timber species as strategy in the coffee farm. Yeah. Move to the next point, which is about water. Yeah, so currently the water amount used for coffee farm is huge. So on average, one coffee tree will consume like a 500 to 600 liters per time. Yeah, and usually the farmer will irrigate 3-4 times per year. And each hectare we will have like a 1,100 coffee tree. So it's consume a lot of water. Yeah, we can get it. Yeah, and for our data, irrigation for coffee is I just presented. It's very common in coffee. 97 to 98% of farmer apply coffee irrigation. And we also look at like how farmer, what's the irrigation system they apply, and shaving system that you mentioned here is very low, just few percent. Yeah. So and I think the issue is because of the cost involved in water saving system. Yeah. However, I also and we also look at the water shortage problem. We asked the farmer, and we found that like almost half, like 45% of the farmer have a problem with water shortage for irrigation. Yeah. So yeah, applying a saving system is also is one of the initiative, one of the measurement. But I'm looking at different aspect, and it's in line with our team today, which is like we can use the integrated or agroforestry approach, because with this one it will benefit the coffee farm, and it will reduce the water need, yeah, by maintaining the shady and a cover crop. Yeah, so it can help create a better micro environment and keep the soil moisture high, and soil temperatures low. Yeah. So in short, I think apart from like applying technology, agroecology, agroforestry approach is the way to reduce the water shortage in the coffee farm for long-term strategy. Okay, climate change and mitigation and adaptation. Yeah, so yeah, everyone witnessed the climate change hits our life, every aspect of our life, and in agriculture, in coffee sector. We also look at the global level when we ask the farmer about what's the challenge in coffee production, and climate change is one of the top 5 main concerns of the farmer globally. So more than 20 countries, and for Vietnam, it's ranked top 3. So climate change actually affecting the coffee production now. And in the theme of what we are trying to promote now is the agroforestry or ecosystem services. There one report from Agroecology or IDH, they also mentioned that with the integrated farm, the carbon footprint will be like a less than 30% emission compared to the mono one. So so it's quite so in terms of climate change, we reduce the carbon emission is the target. And for the coffee sector, is target to zero or low carbon emission. And we can see there are some projects, big project in that you already mentioned in the point 4 here, which is a PPI landscape from IDH or from UN. So it's promoting the carbon production reduction and forest-based agriculture and sustainable farming practices. Okay, I think because of the matter of the time, I'm going a bit fast, and then if we can have a follow-up discussion later on if required. For land consolidation, so among 9 out of 20 countries that we verified, we found that 9 out of 20 is below 1 hectare. And the average farm size for coffee farm in Vietnam is 1.1 hectare. So actually, we are kind of at the average. It's not so small. And in recent years, the Vietnam government encouraged the implementation of large landfill. I think starting with rice. So I think we know that for this model, it has some kind of benefits like input access or market access and more consistent in farming practices. But first to do this, first the farmer need to group as a co-op. And like restructure the production organization. However, I think the witnessing or the challenge in this matter is a requirement of good capacity or management skill of the leader. Okay, so the next one is the tree and crop planting. I think that those are online with whatever we mentioned before. Agroforestry system will be the target, and but we need to have each government, like a local government, need to have a master plan. It should combine with clear technical guidance on which area are suitable for which crop. Say, for example, the density farming practices and strong market linkage, so that the farmer will not like an oversupply. Like whenever, say, for example, avocado, when the price are high, everyone rush to grow avocado, and yeah, making the situation is like an oversupply and price drop. So yeah, so just an example, like an avocado in 5-10 years is at $1.22 per kg, but when it's a kind of oversupply, now it's a decline to just 0.2 or 0.3 kg, dollar per kg, so almost 10 times lower. So I think for the planning of these, it should have a master plan locally. Okay, so last point about poverty elevation. I mentioned in the my presentation that we can see clearly that above poverty levels higher with the intercrop group. And for the labor market, it's also one of the 5 challenging for Vietnam, and especially in the pandemic time. Now coffee harvest season is on, and the farmer is struggling finding the labor. And I think agroforestry is not just require the poverty, but it's provide more labor availability, because it can spread out for different crops in the on the farm. So it will reduce the pressure of labor shortage, especially with the harvesting season of coffee. And as far as I know, the research institution like a WASI, they are performing some kind of mechanical practices experiment with breeding like a different coffee variety that's suitable for mechanization. So that's really the strong-term strategy. So to wrap up, I think as mentioned in my presentation, the farming practices will keep be driven by the market. We need to have a kind of initiative to promote the agroforestry system or ecosystem services, so that the farmer and all of the stakeholders can understand the win-win situation of this approach. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hui and Juan. This has actually allowed us to go a little bit more deeply into one particular area and look at some of these complexities. And it's quite interesting, I think, particularly some of the points about ecosystem services and the way that they need to be better understood and perhaps better integrated with the other commercial aspects of any crop such as coffee. Just remind everybody that we don't have a raised hand option for this. We don't have a way to bring you into the conversation. And if you do have a question, please put it in the Q&A and we will get back to it after the next session. So thanks very much to Hui and Juan for that very interesting session as well. And we will now, I'm going to hand over to my colleague Estelle, and she's going to introduce herself, and then she's going to lead us through the next part of the session. So over to you, Estelle.
Thank you very much, Sue. So I'm Estelle Dienabe. I'm an agricultural economist. I'm working for CIRAD, the French Institute on Agricultural Research for Development. And I've been based in Vietnam for almost 6 years now. And I am a scientific coordination of the Agroecology and Safe Food System project, the ASSET project, which is part of the organization behind this conference. And we are a research and development project in supporting all of these agroecological processes in the region from both a technical and a social perspective. And we are very happy to have that conference going on and feeding into all of the different actions that are needed towards really making the transformations toward agroecology in the strongest sense. That means transforming a food system towards more sustainability. I thought we could have a break, but actually we've gone over our time with the second session with a very passionate discussion with Hue. So I propose that we just turn to the third session and we go with the last two presentations. So the next presentation is to be done by Dr. Nguyen Thanh Binh, who is the lecturer and secretary of the Council for Science and Education at the Mekong Delta Development Research Institute, part of the Canto University in Vietnam. And he has experience in qualitative and quantitative research, approaches to sustainable agricultural transformation, rural livelihood analysis, water resource management, vulnerability assessment, and climate change adaptations. Binh has been working as a national consultant for the United Nations University in Bonn, for UNDP in Vietnam and FAO Vietnam, and he holds a bachelor's in agronomy from Canto University and a master's degree in rural development, which is a joint degree between Ghent University and Canto, and a PhD in agricultural science at Bonn University, Germany. Binh, the floor is yours for the next 15 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can I share my screen? So can you see my screen?
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for the introduction. Thank the organizer give me this opportunity to share my research study. My name is Binh from Consolidation University, Vietnam. Now I would like to share with you the topic on green transformation in agriculture for sustainability of rural livelihood, experience from the coastal area of Vietnamese Mekong Delta. This is the outline of my presentation. It includes introduction, focus area, context and transformation process, agroecological system design for a new system, and the key benefit, also key challenges and lessons learned. As you know, green economy concept become popular in our discussion nowadays because it's friendly to the ecosystem and also contribute to poverty alleviation. In agriculture, agroecology and circular agriculture, as previous presentation already mentioned, can also contribute to sustainable food and livelihood sustainability that promote green growth. However, research on practical case for green transformation in agriculture and rural livelihood sustainability remain underexplored. Then, this communication, I would like to share with you a case study in the Mekong Delta. The reason is the most productive agricultural area and also the most vulnerable to climate change and sea level rise. This map shows you where the Mekong Delta is located in the south of Vietnam and have neighbor to Cambodia, and surrounding here is the sea. This graph shows you the Mekong Delta covering around 12% of land area and 20% of population. However, the Mekong Delta contributes annually around 55% rice production and more than 70% of our culture production. It means very important in terms of food security, also rice export of the countries. However, this area faces many challenges. Among them, upstream development from upper countries in the Mekong region, and also climate change, sea level rise from the seas, especially the coastal lines like this red light surrounding the sea, the coast. And that's why I focus in this area. And the context and transformation process, this timeline show you some key events in the process of green transformation. Just after 1986, the government have đổi mới policies or renovation. After this policy, many irrigation projects invested in the area, including the coastal area for rice production. So the farming system changed from traditional rice, one crop per year, to high yield variety rice. It reached to 2 or 3 crops per year. And then, like mentioned, under climate change and upstream development, the drought and salinity intrusion become more serious in this region, especially after 2015, 2016, the region faced very heavy drought and salinity intrusion. Then people changed to the new farming system from mono rice to rice stream integrated farming system. In terms of government policy, in 2017, the government also have the new policy that called the Resolution 120, allowed people with the principle for living with nature. Then the result, you see, up to 2015, rice production increased very fast, and after that, it's reduced. And the rice stream area is increased, especially after the heavy drought, as I mentioned in 2015. This picture show you how the people transform from rice to rice stream with the key step. For example, the people committee build a shifting plan, and then it should be approved by the commune level and revise the plan, and then it should be approved by the district people committee. After the district approve for this plan, it's come to implementation. From this process, you can see that the stakeholder involved here, many like the farmer, it means the community, the people meeting at the community level. The people committee, including commune level and also district level, Department of Natural Resource and Environment, Department of Agriculture and Rural Development, Extension Agency, scientists, the input supplier, and also middlemen. So this is the key stakeholder involved in the transformation process. And how the system designed. As you see here, the mono rice farming system, this is the rice, then they convert to integrated rice stream model. And in this new model, the field designed like 70% for rice, 15% for water surface for our culture, and 15% for the surrounding dike to protect our culture. This shows you the seasonal calendar. This rainfall level during the years, and in the wet season, between July and November, the water is fresh water, so farmer they cultivate rice. And in the rice season, instead of cultivate rice as previously, now the farmer, they introduce aquaculture, for example, tiger shrimp or white leg shrimp, because this species can survive under salinity level. And in the wet season, beside rice cultivation, they also introduce freshwater aquaculture, for example, giant prawns and mud crab. And with this farming system, farmers also have natural fish, natural shrimp, natural crab in their system due to less use of pesticides. This picture shows you how integrated or how circular in this farming system. So the aquaculture, like shrimp, prawn, crab, or fish, they made provide waste as the nutrient for rice field, and the rice field plays important role in terms of biofilter. So it's better water environment for shrimp and other aquatic species, and this also play an important role as biocontrol for rice field. And the aquaculture also made improve the soil environment for rice field, and the rice field made fit back to as the natural feed for shrimp and crab, like the rice straw, after harvesting the rice field. So it's very important natural food for the aquaculture, and the farmer can have a very green product from rice, from shrimp, from prawn, from crab, from fish, because all of this based on natural way. So from that we can see how benefit of this new farming system in terms of economy. Farmers have better income, and also more in terms of diversification, in terms of environment, as you seen in the previous graph, that is circular, very good in terms of circular agriculture. Farmer use very less agrochemicals, because if you use agrochemical, it will be harmful for shrimp and aquatic species. And the system in terms of ecological, that's very good in terms of biodiversity, because not only like the product itself, but also natural fish and other natural biomass. This also benefit in terms of culture and community health, because less use of pesticides. So farmer and rural condition is very good. Water, also the air, and the product is green, also good for consumer. And you see here in this picture, children can play in the area, but with this rice monoculture for pesticides and chemical use, so it's very harmful for environment and also for rural culture. However, this system also faced some challenges and quickness. For example, unstable weather, unstable market price, and lack of investment for agribusiness. As I mentioned, this farming system can provide organic or green product, but the price of this product is the same as intensive farming system. The system also faced with infrastructure, because the irrigation system previously used for rice now changed to rice stream, and this should be changed in the new system for water treatment for disease control. And the last one, there are limited study on circular and low carbon agriculture. So the picture I show you, it is like during discussion with farmer, but how circular in terms of economic in terms of nutrient circle. It is not yet clear in this neo farming system, and request for more study on that. Lesson learned from this: the sustainability of rural livelihood should based on nature solution, and the sustainability of rural livelihood also should think at global level, like green economy or organic market. And the think global should be acted at local level, like this system, circular agriculture. Last but not least, well engagement of stakeholder is very important for this sustainability of rural livelihood. And that is what I want to share with you in this opportunity. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Bin, for the very rich presentation and for pointing out all of the wellness of benefits from this integrated system and providing us a different system from the coffee system and showing the same types of dynamics and showing how policies can actually support this move together with other factors. Thanks also for pointing out the fact that there are still limited studies on really comprehending and assessing the benefits arising from circularity and low carbon agriculture. Yeah, so I think it was very complementary with what we heard before. And I would propose that we now turn to the last presentation before we get discussion for these two papers. So I'm now giving the floor to Isabelle Ann Lee and Thuyen Tan Nguyen. Isabelle is a communication officer for Asia, in Asia for the Alliance of Biodiversity International and CIAT, and she leads both internal and external communication initiatives to support research levels in Asia. She also graduates. She's a graduate of Masters in Disaster Risk and Resilience at Ateneo de Manila University, and she has 5 years of experience in development and science communication. And our colleague Huyen, she is a senior research associate working on food environment and consumer behavior at the Alliance of Biodiversity CIAT. She works as the country coordinator of the CG research program on agriculture for nutritional health, A4NH, being based in Vietnam, and she leads here the activities of the cross-center A4NH program in support of the national government and international agency, as well as different movements in building sustainable food systems. And this program, as you will see from the presentation, is aiming at ensuring the production, delivery, and use of healthy food that ultimately provide economic, social, and nutritional benefits to all consumers. And the research interests are more specifically in nutrition-sensitive food system, food environment, and consumer behavior. Isabelle and Huyen, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Estelle. I'm now going to be sharing my screen. Let me know if you see it.
Perfect, thank you.
Great. So good morning, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Isabelle Lee. I will be sharing the presentation on behalf of Thuyen, and she will be joining us for the Q&A later. So to begin, at the Alliance, we are looking at how urbanization and globalization drives food system transformation from in terms of food production and rapid migration to urban areas where things are pushing diverse smallholder farms to monocultures to cater to demand. So the Alliance has been working with multi-stakeholder partners to assess food systems, the food environment, consumer behavior, and how these translate to positive outcomes in policy, food security, socioeconomic and welfare, and environmental development. So this morning, our presentation it follows the high-level panel of experts in food security and nutrition framework. So basically, this just discusses the overarching challenge for agriculture and food systems, basically to sustainably meet the increasing and evolving dietary demands of the world, granted that the food systems is being challenged by, climate change and the degrading environment. And we have to put focus more on the more vulnerable population. So this framework just identifies the 5 different drivers in the food system, and it also looks at how these interact with the 3 constituent elements, which are food value chains, food environment, and consumer behavior, to deliver dietary outcomes as well as health outcomes, sustainability, and socioeconomic goals. So to dive into the work of the Alliance, in the past year, we recently published the Sustainable Food Systems Profiles in Northern Vietnam. Basically, this is a discussion of the rural to urban transit. So we chose 3 different sites. We chose Moc Chau, Gao Jai, and Dong Ang for the urban, peri-urban, and urban areas. And these profiles have been executed in partnership with the National Institute of Nutrition, as well as the local farmer groups in these areas. So basically, the goal of these profiles were to provide an in-depth description of contrasting realities and possible rural to urban linkages at the subnational level in the country, and also to serve as a knowledge base or a tool for better assessment of food system issues, identification of the gaps, and how the drivers interact with all of these and inform the decision-making process. So if you want to see the profiles, you may check out this link. It will take you to a blog post where you can see the individual links to the 3 food system profiles and the comparison profile. So just to give you a taste of what the results were, we want to zoom into Moc Chau, which was the urban site. So in Moc Chau, there were the majority of the population are 60% coming from 10 minority ethnic groups. And as we know, most of these ethnic groups are also smallholder farmers. And the environment in Vietnam, in Moc Chau most especially, is suitable for year-long agricultural and livestock production. And however, even if they produce a lot of agricultural products and livestock, there's still prevalence of poverty and malnutrition in this area. And as we see in this graph here and in this visual, we see that children under 5 and adult men and women, their diets are mostly composed of meat and dairy. So from an environmental and nutrition lens, we need to further diversify these diets and increase fruit and vegetable intake to help improve the diets and minimize the environmental footprint. Also in this area, and we can reflect these inputs for other rural areas, there are vast differences in access, opportunities, and infrastructure that involve food supply chains, environment, and consumer behavior. And the increase in agricultural production are mostly influenced by national and global demand, which is driving productivity in rural areas. However, this may change how agricultural and livestock production are being performed in these areas as well. And as we know, and we have discussed earlier among the other speakers, seasonal variations in climate and weather, for example, prolonged droughts or less rain or more intense storms, are affecting the production of high-value crops, which are hampering smallholder farmers and family farmers' access to much-needed fruits and vegetables. So the results of the years-long work in Vietnam, including the food system profiles, were used to describe the food system, how the state of the food systems now in northern Vietnam, and it was used as an input during the national and subnational dialogues for the UN Food System Summit back in September, and the dialogues were conducted around July. And these were the inputs were used to draft the roadmap of Vietnam to achieve their goals for food systems transformation. So we know now that food supply and food systems rely on good production. And here we have identified 3 opportunities to improve food systems. The first is on seed systems development, because we want to begin with having access to reliable quality planting material. So the work that we're doing now on seed systems development, particularly in Maison and Sapa districts, it's currently ongoing until 2022, is that to address the inadequate access to quality seeds of both exogenous and indigenous varieties, and to help meet farmer seed access and seed security to achieve food security and diversity, because we know that especially in the northern highlands of Vietnam, is that vegetables remain to be a main source of livelihood and nutrition among ethnic minority farmers. So it is important that growing fresh produce and participating in seed markets offer inclusive developments, particularly among the women and youth. So a lot of our current interventions involve farmer capacity building on seed system and seed and vegetable production, and highlighting the importance of these in diversity and nutrition. One approach that we use in these areas are farmer business school approaches to produce and market quality seeds, and also link the farmers with a seed distribution company that will support the sustainability of this initiative. And we started the formation of diet health clubs composed of ethnic minority farmers, which serve as a platform to exchange their learnings, exchange seeds with one another, and ultimately support one another in vegetable production and navigating markets. So there's this linkage not just on seeds focused, but also helping these farmers connect their produce to markets as well. And the second initiative that I will be sharing with you is the access to assessing informal food flows, which was a project implemented from 2018 to 2020. This initiative aimed to provide Wi-Fi to assess food flows in traditional markets. So this work by installing Wi-Fi in traditional markets around Hanoi, and the consumers may connect to this by answering just a short survey. So the survey related to food flows, and this was worked out with the General Statistics Office. So basically, the data collected for this work included food origin, food price and quality, distribution distance, seasonability, and socioeconomic markers, and strengths and weaknesses in markets. So this aimed to characterize and monitor traders and retailers, and as well as consumer food flows, so to assess how the consumers also interact with the retailers. So some of the results show that food flows are largely informal in this area. So this work recognized that the interactions between the retailers and consumers are main vehicles for food access to low-income households. And these traditional markets are also sources of several food system hazards because of the way these markets are set up. But this approach was recognized to be able to give or track real-time changes in food flows in Vietnam, and especially since it was conducted partly during the pandemic, the novel approach in collecting data was able to contribute to identifying policy actions to improve food system transformation at times of uncertainties. And then on the work on fruit and vegetable nutrition, which aims to describe the general trend surrounding fruit and vegetable consumptions in households and characterize how the retail setup affects fruit and vegetable sales. So basically, this project looks into the traditional markets as well. And we have been working with the retailers on designing prototypes and methods to sell more fruits and vegetables. So this FVN initiative aims to address food safety concerns, as I also mentioned earlier, is because a lot of the more traditional markets outside of the supermarkets and the convenience stores, for example, there are a lot of display how fruit and vegetables are displayed in these areas that pose food safety concerns. So we kind of worked and developed prototypes on improving these by using outreach activities. For example, the second point there, which is a more modern stalls that, you know, kind of communicate a more food safe presentation of goods. We also prototype the coupon method that, you know, if you buy this much fruits over a period of time, you get a reward. So it kind of encourages that people buy more of the healthier produce. And of course, there have been some social media and public address system campaigns to help encourage people to buy more fruits and vegetables. So the ever-evolving work in food systems, in particular, studying the interaction between the districts, provinces, and from consumer to retailers using the framework I showed earlier, allows us to look at understanding consumer behavior in times of uncertainties to help shape interventions and look for, you know, novel approaches that our team over at the Alliance can work with different ministries in Vietnam. So understanding the interaction of the districts and the provinces allowed for the local food system and diversified shorter value chains to develop, as they play a huge role in responding to ensure that the food system thrives during and even after the COVID-19 pandemic. So just for the last part of the presentation, I'm just going to highlight 3 lessons learned, which were first to understand the interaction of the districts and provinces in the northern Vietnam region, as I mentioned earlier, allowed for the local food system and food value chains to develop as they respond and value from shocks, because we found that with the baseline information that we have, it's easier to target which driver or which kind of stakeholder we are going to work with to ensure that there's adequate food supply during the COVID-19 pandemic. The second is the support of important actors who are on management boards, authorities, service providers, and participants ensures smoother implementation of the new approaches to explore food system issues. And finally, it is important to recognize that many food traders and sellers, as well as the consumers, are also family farmers. So the actions that we introduce to enable food distribution, better food distribution, will also help these family farmers to have better access, not just to food, but to livelihood opportunities and improved income. So I think that wraps up my presentation. If you have any questions outside of the session today, you may reach out to Tuyen and myself and these emails provided. So back to you, Estelle.
Yes, thank you so much, Isabel, for that very rich presentation and for very much bringing that food system perspective and all of the actors that are operating in these food systems, and for showing what's the potential for different novel approaches in really connecting the dots between the different actors and really making sure that we move into especially healthier diets. So thanks a lot for that, for pointing out new actors that were not in our discussion before, that are the management board of markets, traditional market, the local authorities were in there, but you provided a different background to that, the question of the service providers. So thanks a lot, and with no further ado, I give the floor to Dr. Annie Mitin, who is advisor to the Malaysian Agroecology Society and was previously executive director of the Southeast Asian Council for Food Security and Fair Trade, SICON. Annie, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Estelle. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Very interesting two presentations we have today, and looking at the local case study going towards a global overview, a bigger overview of different multi-stakeholder initiatives in transforming the food system. I will look at, my discussion will go towards more into policy relevance of, and I will look at the paper separately first, and then later look at the policy areas that are related to both presentations. The first paper, we have the Green Transformation in Agriculture for Sustainability of Rural Livelihoods. Thank you, Dr. Bing, for providing us with this. And we understand that because of climate change and the upstream development, we see that this the people, the farmers, move to transform their food system from monoculture to rice shrimp model. And it is also interesting to see that transformation process took place over a period of 30 years, from 1986 to 2017 and beyond, that you have captured. And the highlight is also on the changes in policy agenda in Vietnam, which from the Doi Moi policy to the Living with Nature policy. I will look at this initiative from three, it was not mentioned in the presentation, but it was mentioned in the paper provided to me, that three policy was mentioned here. First is the decision 1485 with guidance on climate change integration. When from the paper, it was found that this policy was difficult to implement. Yeah, and I think it is very important to see when policy is formed and difficult to implement due to lack of supporting regulation for this. I think this is earlier the discussion about the convergence, diversion, or inconsistency of policy will also come into play. The second policy is on decision 1418, where the local government in the area allowed farmers to convert rice land to rice shrimp production. I think this policy is really a driver to move the integrated farming system forward. And from the comment, it was also mentioned that this policy, compared to the first one, was easy to implement because the clear condition, was set up to allow this conversion. But this will also bring me to think, because this initiative is at the local government level, whether there is enough study to look at this policy impact, the policy impact assessment, whether other local government should also follow suit, to looking at this, whether this should be emulated by other local government to convert rice land into integrated farming system. And if there is, what would be the trade-off that would occur in the bigger or the national level? The third policy that was mentioned was this resolution 120, the nature policy, or the nature-based policy that enable transformation of organic and high-tech practices which that respect the natural law. And this is, I think, very important because it provides a space for the country to transition to agroecology. However, I would also look at this policy and how it will align with the other strategy, especially which also related to this paper and the second presentation related to seed policy in Vietnam. So I will come back to look at the seed policy when it comes to this presentation and the second one as well. But also to me, it is interesting to note that this rice and shrimp farming is not something new to the local local community, because this has been practiced for a long time. So there is a need for research to document and analyze the adaptation of this local knowledge. Yeah, because earlier, even with one cropping season, they have learned to adjust their agriculture activities to suit the fresh water and the brackish water. And this is very important to the human capital in the sustainable rural livelihood, and to see the transformation in the knowledge capacity of farmers. Let me go now to the second presentation, looking at delivering cross-cutting action to the local food system in Vietnam. Very interesting, looking at the various stakeholder players, and especially the focus into consumption, consumer behavior, and looking at the drivers, the market, and again, looking at seed system, diet and nutrition. And this is really a cross-cutting where they really look at the beneficiaries at the rural, peri-urban, and urban area. But it is important to also for me to see, coming from a background that is also looking into consumer rights movement and farmers' rights movement, that the alliance recognize that family members are also traders and sellers and also consumers. I think this is very important, as it is linked to the policy in food nutrition and also consumer protection policy. Because we cannot, when we mention consumer, you have to put consumer protection on, and whether the realization of consumer rights and their responsibilities are also being considered. And on the initiative that is related to Wi-Fi services in this traditional market, I think this is very novel initiative, to link farmers, consumers, to provide, enable them to sell and buy food. But my concern is also about the active scanning request. Again, from consumer protection policy perspective, this could also, whether consumer education is there to provide digital literacy in terms of their responsibility and their action to also go into the digital platform. So this is something, and of course, and again, with the prior informed consent in terms of how data is used, whether they are also actively involved as a player in this kind of initiative. So policy relevant that I see here is also the transformation towards nutrition sensitive food system. The case study in Mok Chau, I think, very interesting, and so I wonder whether the first study related to shrimp will also see similar phenomenon. For example, in Mok Chau, because livestock is one of the dairy production is very high, so consumption is switched to have dairy intense diet. Yeah. So in the farming system with shrimp, will we also see later that the dietary pattern or consumption nutritional contribution of seafood or of shellfish it will be also more when we learn from what we see in Mok Chau. But it's also important to see that nutrition, it was highlighted in the paper that the nutrition education in the rural area is still lacking. Yeah, and consumers have very little motivation to consume nutritious food, even when they have increase in income. And this also suggests, even with higher income, it doesn't mean that family farmers' household members are getting nutritious food. So there is gap to be filled in terms of nutrition education and consumer education. I think nutrition education, I think Dr. Weiss has mentioned this yesterday as well. So if we look at the transformation of food system, whether the outcome of improved livelihood is really then linked to dietary and improved nutrition and food safety environment. And the second policy that I also linked to this second paper is on policy on digital agriculture and personal data security. Yeah, again with the IR 4.0 and ASEAN 4th IR strategy. Yeah, I think this transformation, we need to really look at it, how it will affect agroecology. And at the consumer level, at the farmer level, it is also important that digital literacy is provided, because the implication of big data market is very, very critical now, and we are not able to know what this data are being used. And again, when it comes to research, what are the role of consumers and farmers in contributing this data? The prior informed consent or how the data is used, I think is very critical, must be critically looked at. Let me just go back to the seed policy. It was the second presentation, look at Farmers Business School. I think this is a very nice approach to a very novel idea to have a good initiative. In the shrimp, rice shrimp production also, special rice variety is also mentioned. But again, I will also look at the impact of Vietnam being a UPOF 91 member, yeah, and the impact on farmers of capacity or rights to save, use, and exchange their seed. Yeah, this is something that I think very critical to look at, whether this transformation will also result in infringing into the rights of farmers. I just shared recently, I think the government of Vietnam, buy out the IP rights for ST25 rice. And this is a huge public fund that is being used to buy out IP rights. Yeah, so here we can only see what is the trade-off that family farming could have if the seed ownership and local biodiversity are exploited by commercial farmers. So the linkages from seed structure and seed market, I think we have to look at into this aspect of how especially the multi-stakeholder players in Vietnam. The next policy I would like to also look at, mention, is also on the consumer protection law. And we mentioned again, yeah, that family farmer members of family farms are also consumers and traders. So in this, the connection to law on protection of consumer rights, Law 59, yeah, especially when it comes to e-commerce and digital platform, we have to really look at the gap here, because my work earlier with the consumer organization, we see a lot of gap in terms of consumer education, linking to product, to their rights, their responsibility, looking at food safety, labeling, certification system. These have to go hand in hand. The final policy that I would like to look at also in terms of the long-term aspect is the land law in Vietnam, because we know that the 2003 land law imposed very strict ceiling on land ownership, and especially with the first presentation. Will we see, since consolidation or ownership of land is very controlled, so how do we see expansion of rice shrimp production? Whether at the end of the day we will also see more towards again movement towards intensification if they are not able to expand the site for production. So there is finally, I would also link again to the discussion about research and capacity of farmers, especially looking at the element of co-creation in both the studies, the presentation. The aspect of family farmers, their role are still not visible, especially when we look at nutrition. How do we know that this is family farming household, and this is the kind of food they are eating, and how much is coming from the farm-based and non-farm-based income. And when it comes to research, it is from my work, it is very important to see farmers are not just samples to our study or to our research. Most of the time we use them as our subject matter, but not in the role that they are co-leading and co-designing the research approach. So this is my concern, and I would also look at if research approach can continue to accommodate farmers as researchers, where citizen science could be practiced locally and nationally and internationally. And the final note, I would also like to mention the review by Wessel et al. In 2020. If we were to transition to have a transformative change in the food system through agroecology, 4 key entries are important: the diversity, secular and solidarity economy, co-creation, and sharing of knowledge, and responsible governance before the other elements follow. Diversity is first so in that way, when it comes to research approach, ownership and recognition, diversity of actors co-owning this research is very important. Recognition that they are part of this research is important. And finally, we need to have a lot more policy impact assessment and research to be done, especially looking at the still going to the micro level, where this food system transformation is really farm-based income, and it is correlated to food security, nutrition, and family farming system. With that, that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Annie, for these very rich comments and for bringing so many insights into the policies, which was at the heart of our session this morning. So thanks for bringing. And especially, I noticed that question of digital literacy and making sure farmers are at the center stage of our research. So how do we handle our data policies? How do we work with farmers in creating data and in using data, etc.? So yeah, very point, I think, very well taken. Thanks very much also for pointing out even more strongly the consumer dimension. And I will leave the floor now to either, well, I don't know, maybe we could start with Isabelle and Thuyen, and then give the floor to Bin. There are a few questions in the chat, so if you've seen them, do not hesitate to also react on them. Thuyen, maybe? Do you want to start?
Yeah, Isai can start also, because Isai put a lot of efforts into bring together different stories and different projects together in this communication. Isai, please. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Tuyen. Thanks, Annie, for your comments. I think what you said about, looking further into how to better integrate the farmers and the work that we do, and not just, putting them there as subjects or as respondents or questions. I think it gives more value to the human aspect of the work, and also protecting them of with their recognizing their rights, not just as consumers but also as, say, indigenous people and all these things. It gives, I think your inputs also gives us like this kind of perspective of how to move things forward in terms of a more participatory manner. But I also want to highlight, and I just did not mention it in the presentation, that we're using more participatory approaches. And of course, in the food system profiles that we did, I think Tuyen can elaborate on it further later, because she and her team worked on all of these things. And coming from a communication perspective, I think there's a lot of opportunity there as well to give a more human dimension in how we present this work, because it's all just policies and papers when you look at it, and we need to find more human interactions and give these information to the people who need them the most as well. So I think there's a lot of opportunities there based on your comments to give this work more relevance to the people on the ground as well. So over to Tuyen for her thoughts.
Yeah, thank you, Isai. So in fact, after the food system profiles, we have before we do the food system, we did that. We also need to use different ways of communication and interaction to communicate the food system to the local people, because food system like quite complicated for the different levels, not only at the local level but also national level. So the way we downscale the food system framework at the global scale to different level at national and subnational, it took a lot of time. We need to cross check with different surveys to see the reality in the country and how to use different indicators and the metrics of the food system, and how different ministries and how different division in the country manage the food system in terms of the governance, but also in terms of the implementation at the local level. So it took like we need to do in this enabling environment to have the common understanding on the food system at different scale, at the local district level, but also national level will be another story. And then we have just after this one, we haven't put here yet because we just finished maybe like let's say last month. That's after the row 5, we do the policy brief to identify together with them the key top issue of the food system, and go together with different stakeholders, not only the government but also researchers in the same site, and also other stakeholders along the value chain of different commodities at the local food system, and we identify the solution. But how to show that, how to go together, how to work together, how to find the, like the agreement in what is the top 10 need to be shown among different views of different group of people. Not easy, but then we need tools, we need participatory tool, we need criteria, we need to say something transparent to the meetings directly. I think this could be another story, and if we have another chance, maybe we can share with you, because it will touch a lot different tools to do for the next step on the real enrichment to the socio-economic development land at the local level. But without that process, the food system approach will not be completed. So this is just the way we show you the first things. We do more about research, but we still have different things to do the impact from the research. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Isabel and Thuyen. Bin, do you want to react also to any comments? And if you've seen the questions that you've got a number of questions on the management of the integrated rice shrimp system. I've seen question on controlling external effects from surrounding chemical use. Yeah, so yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Actually, I already answered in the chat. So to control the crop, you know, there are many different approach. For example, water level control. Yeah, because the surrounding they have the dye system, so farmer can reduce the water level from the rice field, so crop could not enter to the rice. And also farmer very intelligent in terms of seasonal calendar management. They not put the crop like just beginning of the rice. So when the rice still young, the crop is not in the field. And also other things like I mentioned, this is very nature-based. So the densities of crop is very slow, so it is not really harmful to the rice field. And I also got one question from I think Dr. Hoy. He asked about how to control the chemical effect from surrounding. Actually, this farming system separately from the freshwater area. So as I mentioned, the government have the plan to convert the whole area. This is not like just one individual area among surrounding pesticide use. So it can separately like that. Another question also rise to the issue of land consolidation, like like Annie also mentioned. Actually, you know, like this is individual farming model. So it's been running by farmer, a small farmer, and like you mentioned about the landlord. Actually, the landlord mentioned that people could not like the average is about 3 hectares, for example. But in this case, like around 1 hectare, people can run such kind of farming system. But you know, like people, they also have a small piece of land, for example, 0.2 hectare. They could not run this system, but they can give that land to the other farmer, and the other farmer, they get that land. However, the certificate still the other farmer. So it is not like conflict with the landlord. And I would like to share one framework to explain to you like how the transformation system is work, because this is the way how we interact between human activity with the environment. So the perception of people, including the government, the farmer, and also related stakeholder is very important. And I would like to share with you this framework in our group, and what we call is the MOTA framework. Can you see the frame? Yes. Good.
Yes, thank you.
So this we call a MOTA framework. The motivation and ability framework take a multi-stakeholder and multi-level approach to assess and compare projects and plans, centering on the integrated relation between trigger, motivation, and ability. So if you look at it, the trigger and how people perceive this trigger a threat or opportunities. Yeah, and this with the ability and the motivation. So this perception may result in their motivation and go to action with the ability, and the outcome is here, and this outcome may feedback to the trigger. Just for example, like in the past, yeah, the government deal with the poverty reduction, with the food security. So they want to have right, what we call is rice first policy. So the salinity, the brackish water, but safe the threat. Yeah. So people, they want to prevent the salinity, the brackish. So they build a lot of dike, as I mentioned in the presentation, and such kind of things, yeah, motivate people. So ability in terms of irrigation system, yeah, and the motivation is like food security. So the action here is rice, yeah, and then the outcome is environmental issue. Yeah. So now people, they are think, yeah, another way. So the practice, the salinity is perceived not a threat but opportunities for our culture, because shrimp production, our culture is more economic compared to rice itself. So in this case, including climate change issue, then motivate farmer change to the new farming system. Yeah, the action here is rice shrimp. Yeah, and so the ability here, we also need to do more research on the ability in terms of farmer, in terms of land consolidation, in terms of circular agriculture, and like Annie also mentioned previously, we have this system, but it is very nature. Now, in the new situation, we should do more research on that. And I think this ability is also need to research more in this new system. So that I want to share with you the general framework to explain the policy. So like you mentioned, the policy we have like climate change adaptation 10 years ago, but it's not really come to the practice, because the ability and the motivation of the local people. The policy is there, but the ability at local level to implement that is very important. So in this, my example, the government have resolution 120, and then the local people, they have the district level, they have the decision. So that's, like from the top and from the bottom. Yeah, it is very easy for people to transform in this case. So thank you very much for your listening to this explanation.
Thank you so much, Dean, for providing this insights into the behaviors. I think it creates a very nice understanding of how changes can be triggered. Thanks a lot for that. We can see that the time is over. We were intending to have a wrap up, but I think unfortunately we're not going to ask you to go through that with us. We will ask the speaker and the discussion to react on our proposed PowerPoint for this afternoon final session. I maybe just try to go through a few points that were discussed this morning that we thought were very enlightening. Thanks very much, Elmi, for very much putting to the center stage that question of social community entrepreneurship and how to get it working concretely on the ground by linking together local champions with universities and the multitude of stakeholders on the ground, with universities backstopping and local champions at the center stage. Thanks for bringing these elements of social learnings and how it was used in Indonesia, in your experience. Thanks a lot, Koichi, for bringing us all of that understanding, very long-term understanding of how the organic movement developed in Japan and then declined recently, and what could be used as lessons to help creating a movement for agroecology. Thanks for pointing out the importance of addressing the concerns of the young, and for pointing out that there is a lot of alignment between the concerns of the young and what agroecology proposes. And for pointing out that links that were in the movement in the Japanese movement, organic movement and Taikai movement, between consumer movements and producer movements. Thanks a lot also in that regard, Isabel and Thuyen, for pointing our research can help connecting producers and consumers together with all of the stakeholders here and pointing out these novel approaches to do that. And thanks a lot, Annie, for bringing into the discussion all of the policy considerations that are important to it, and especially the consumer policy considerations and the question in relation with data policies. And I think that also ring a bell with regard to what Hue and Roy were presenting with regard to data-driven approaches. Thanks also for pointing out the importance of the seed systems, and there has been very active participation on that, the question of seed systems and how it is important into ensuring a transformation of the production systems that came out in different times during our morning. And thank you so much, Daniel, for really pointing the question of what about agroecology as being localized processes with direct connection with producers and consumers versus global commercial trades and booming crops, industrial crops, and how do we engage with these big processes, and how is agroecology connecting to them? As you pointed out, is it a question of advocacy? Is it a question of wholly being apart from it? I think these are very important consideration when we want to act locally, but also think globally, and making sure that we really make agroecology in capacity to trigger the changes that we are all looking for, socially in particular. And you were pointing also environmentally with concerns that you are raising with regard to responsible agricultural investment. And then, yeah, I think we are all very in agreement that these are all multi-stakeholder processes that need to take place at all levels. And thank you so much for bringing this very important element of what data can help providing Hue and Hoy, and how we can help enriching our vision of the performance of different systems, and showing that the most productive systems from a yield perspective is not necessarily the more performing systems, and for inviting us to revise our metrics in that regard. And thank you so much also, Juan, for pointing out all of the inconsistency between agricultural policy and environmental policies and the different kind of policies, and pointing out the needs for really better integrating different policy frameworks. And I think I'm just going to stop there. Thanks very much to all for the very rich discussion. Apologize if we didn't manage to handle all of the questions. I think it was more or less, but if it were not the case, we will try and get back to those people that were not given answer to their questions. And we are already 5 minutes after schedule. Can I just ask all the discussants and speakers to put their camera on so that we can do a quick screenshot before we end up the session? Thuyen, are you still with us?
Yes, Esther.
Koichi, yes.
I have some
and Nova,
problem.
and I think the CRCA team, don't hesitate to also appear.
Okay, I'm calling on the circuit team to open their cameras. Is Pierre still here? No, it's not anymore. Okay. Where are the others? Dr. Ikigami is still here?
Koichi, are you still with us?
Dr. Koichi, you will take the screenshot. Okay. Dr. Tui
Your smiles for about a minute.
Okay.
Okay, I will take several shots.
I think Tuyen is having trouble with her camera.
Smile. 1, 2, 3. Another. 1, 2, 3. Smile. And last one. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
So thank you very much again to all. And yeah, we're closing the session now.
Yeah,
Bye,
we put the links to the sessions this afternoon in the chat box. So you can join us through those Zoom links. Thank you.
And many thanks also to the CIRCA support team and all their help to get things running. Great job. Thank you.
Yes,
Thanks, Dr. Su. See you this afternoon.
Okay,
See you this
bye-bye.
afternoon.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Bye now, everyone.